The Siege of Yorktown, September 28th to October 29th, 1781. We started off our visit at Yorktown at the National Park Museum, located in the National Park headquarters of Yorktown between Hampton Roads and Williamsburg. It was interesting to find a small display inside the museum talking about Fort Frederick out in western Maryland, which was used during the Revolutionary War as a prisoner of war camp. Among the items inside the museum that I found to be more interesting were General Washington's chamber tent and his sleeping marquee. The chamber tent, according to the plaque, actually fit inside the sleeping marquee and was used as General Washington as his private quarters during the war. I apologize for the grainy video, but the lighting was so dim it made it difficult to adjust the camera to make sure the exposure came out where you could see it at all. Just outside of the museum is the British Inner Defense Line, readouts 9 and 10, and then the 2nd Allied Siege Line, where it connects with the Grand French Battery off to the right. After leaving the museum and the grounds around the National Park Service headquarters, we moved over to the 2nd Allied Siege Line. The 2nd Allied Siege Line was constructed October 11th and 12th, 1781 by Allied forces of the Continental Army. The siege line was within point-blank range of the British. However, the siege line could not be completed because of two detached British earthen forts, readouts 9 and 10, blocked the way to the York River. This is a section of the 1,000-foot-long earthwork for the Grand French Battery, the largest gun emplacement on the Allied American side. This gun emplacement contained approximately 30 pieces of artillery that bombarded the British defense over a half-mile away. So effective was its work that the digging of the second parallel could take place a day later. The extension of the 2nd Allied Siege Line had to be stopped after it was extended from the Grand French Battery due to the occupation by British forces in readouts 9 and 10. Once readouts 9 and 10 were captured by the Americans and the French, the 2nd Allied Siege Line could be extended all the way to the York River. On the night of October 14th, French troops attacked Redoubt 9 while American troops stormed Redoubt 10. Both positions were captured in less than 30 minutes. This allowed the Allies to complete the 2nd Allied Siege Line and construct the Grand American Battery between the two redoubts. With the fall of redoubts 9 and 10, Cornwallis realized his troops were trapped against the river. On the night of the 16th, Cornwallis tried evacuating his troops over the river, but his attempt was abandoned when it was interrupted by a storm, which prevented his crossing. On October 17th, the second Allied siege line was completed to redoubts 9 and 10. After more than 9 days of round-the-clock bombardment, Cornwallis requested a ceasefire to discuss surrender terms. So this is the view from redoubt number 9, I think it was, over to stop A at the visitor center. And then to the French lines and the National Cemetery over that way. Pretty amazing to think that our country's beginning started with the end of this battle. In commemoration of the French soldiers and sailors that gave their lives for the American freedom. This memorial site is erected near the site of redoubt number 9, second parallel of the trenches of Yorktown, captured the 14th October 1781. The Augustine Morehouse is where the British and Allied commissions met on October 17, 1781, under a temporary ceasefire to negotiate and draft up terms of surrender of Cornwallis's army. The Morehouse has since been renovated and restored and is now managed and cared for by the National Park Service. On the afternoon of October 19, 1781, Lord Cornwallis's army marched into Surrender Field to lay down their arms. Missing from the surrender formalities was Lord Cornwallis himself, who claimed to be indisposed. Instead, Deputy General O'Hara attempted to surrender his sword to General Rochambeau. However, it was recognized as a possible attempt not to recognize American forces and their victory. General Rochambeau refused to accept O'Hara's sword and suggested he try to surrender it to Washington. Washington was also unwilling to accept the sword and indicated it should be surrendered to Deputy General Lincoln. The sword was finally accepted by Lincoln.